Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and it's really a great pleasure to welcome you all to this event. So, for those of you who don't know me, Adrian is my name, and I'm currently president of the VAA. And we have here a gathering that, look, maybe if everyone doesn't mind, I'll turn the camera around just so people at home can see that we have a bit of a gathering here at at my premises here in Moonee Ponds, and I'm looking forward really to introducing you to two of the VAA members who will be speaking. So, look, firstly, I just wanted to do the acknowledgement to country. So, it's important that we acknowledge that we're on the Wurundjeri Wurrung lands, and that the traditional custodians of this land that we are currently on here in Moonee Valley, and they have a long connection to these lands. We pay our respects to elders past and present. So, as I mentioned, it's really fantastic that we can gather to celebrate World Vitiligo Day, which is on the 25th of June, but today it's a beautiful day here in Melbourne, and I think perfect day to gather. And I really just will say a few words of introduction, but firstly, I guess just a reflection. I had emailed Tia, who's our main speaker today, and said to Tia, look, it'd be great to hear a little bit about how the visibility of vitiligo in our culture these days may lend itself to more acceptance. And it made me reflect that visibility is a bit of a two-edged sword. On the one hand, that I think that people with vitiligo may feel that they would like less visibility and to people not to notice, but yet visibility is, I think, an important element of really just society's acceptance and familiarity with conditions like vitiligo. And of course, whether it's vitiligo or any other aspect of ourselves, we want ideally people not to see us for the skin that we're in, but really to, I guess, to know us, and hopefully we can break through the barriers so that people then can really get to know us for who we really are. I just wanted to firstly introduce Nada Karadzic, who's our VAA Vice President, and Nada has had a very sort of long-standing and personal interest in vitiligo and how it has become a bit more visible. And I'd just firstly like Nada just to share some of her thoughts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fabulous VAA event, which we have been holding each year, both in person and online for the last couple of years. I really love this first slide. It's gratifying to see vitiligo becoming more accepted in society, and there's no doubt that it is. And to me, it is most gratifying. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge all the amazing people who have made this journey possible to greater invisibility. And the image is one of the more influential and larger vitiligo support groups in the US. And while I don't have scope in this talk to mention the amazing contribution of all the support groups globally, I'd like to certainly give our acknowledgement to them all, and my acknowledgement, of course, to my fellow team members here at the VAA who have put this fabulous event together for us today. My focus will be on some of the celebrities, public figures, artists and photographers who are publicly discussing their vitiligo and showing, well, their photos of themselves with it and working towards raising social awareness, and minimizing the social stigma associated with vitiligo, which is a goal we all share here, of course, at the VAA, and it's a global message that all the support groups are trying to ensure gets across. I think the last decade in particular has undoubtedly seen a major shift in the attitudes towards vitiligo, coupled with an incorporation of vitiligo into popular and mainstream culture, which is really quite amazing. You know, the message, as Adrian pointed out, is leaning more towards self-acceptance, and more importantly, the normalization of vitiligo, along with other skin conditions. And I think it's important for us to think of those others today as well, because they're struggling with the same issues. And I think collectively these influencers are sending out a really powerful message, you know, through their personal examples and their works. And that is that vitiligo is not an obstacle to achieve realizing their dreams, hopes, and ambitions. And we will see that they have managed to become highly successful. Not saying that it hasn't been easy, but it's certainly not stood as an obstacle in their way to achieve the great success that they have in their own lives and on the greatest public arena. And I think a further result of the increasing visibility and representation of vitiligo in popular culture is that the discussions around vitiligo are opening up a lot more, and there's more respect and sensitivity being discussed around the topic. Look, while I believe that this movement is really, really positive, I think, as Adrian pointed out, visibility is a two-edged sword, and the talk today is not meant to deny that everyone's had their own personal journey, their own struggles, and it's not necessarily always been a positive one. And there is still a lot of controversy about, you know, what this whole visibility might mean and how it might affect some people who don't really want it to be that visible. Now, my own personal journey was largely in the latter category of not wanting to be visible. I grew up in a small Victorian country town in the 50s. Nobody had ever heard of vitiligo, and it was, for me as a child, really awful and challenging to have it. So how have I managed to turn my personal journey around into a much more positive one? And I think the fact that I'm here today representing the VAA and talking to you all is a real testament of the power of that positive narrative. So, well, how did it happen? Slide 2, please. This is how it happened. I was in a shopping centre where I worked part-time after my retirement in Melbourne, a very upmarket one, and it had a store called Desigual, a Spanish fashion brand. And I was on my way to the ladies one day in my break, and I turned the corner and there it was, this life-size poster of the beautiful, wonderful Winnie Harlow. And I was absolutely taken back. I had never seen anything like this before in my life, and that's a long time. A little bit about Winnie. She grew up as Chantal Brown Young in Canada, obviously a very civilized society where, you know, discrimination was managed, and had a very positive family who supported her with her vitiligo. But she'd always dreamed of becoming a fashion model since she was a little girl. And as you can see, she's got all the attributes to be a fashion model. And she was determined that it was not going to let her get in the way of her success. She'd always accepted her vitiligo and didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So she first stepped into the fashion world, showing her vitiligo with pride and almost defiance. And she had been on the American Top Model TV series, which is, I've watched some sessions of, but not with her. It's where aspiring models have to prove they've got what it takes to be a model. Well, she would have had some extra challenges, I imagine, and I think it's a real testament to her courage and determination that she got through and went on to be so successful. I think it was always her attitude that she was not going to be defined by her vitiligo. And she was really the first model who came out, the first public figure, and stood there and said, I am me. My vitiligo doesn't define me. And she refused to bear the tag of being a sufferer of vitiligo, as a journalist once wrote about her during an interview write-up. It was in the newspaper. And she responded to that and she said, I'm not a sufferer. I'm just me, Winnie, I'm a model and I have vitiligo. And this did lead to some initial controversy, as there was a concern that if people didn't suffer from vitiligo and embraced it, well, maybe the scientific community would lose interest, and particularly the drug companies, because why would they bother seeking a cure or more advanced treatment if, you know, we're all going around saying, well, I love my vitiligo and I embrace it. But I think fortunately, as obviously all the great scientific advances since in the last decade have been developed, this hasn't proven to be the case. So back to when I saw Winnie's image, I just stood there for 5 minutes looking at her and I was just struck for words. My thoughts and feelings were like overwhelmed, but I just knew this was new and there was no going back. And it was unnerving, I must say, in some ways, but really empowering in others. And I went back to the office, not the office, to my store, and I asked my fellow workers whether they had seen this poster. It was pretty life-size. And they said no, they hadn't. And they asked me about it, and I opened up a discussion about vitiligo and my vitiligo in particular. And I think since then, I've been continuing that discussion, and positive hasn't always been. Years later, and then I joined the VAA as its secretary. And I'm very proud of my association and the work I've done for the Vitiligo Association, and what it's done for me in that it's given me so much more confidence. And I don't bother hiding my vitiligo. I'm quite open about it. Next slide, please. So as I said, Winnie was really, to me, though there may be others that I'm sorry if I'm not acknowledging, she really started the movement, certainly in the modelling world. And since her, many, many other young women and men too, internationally and in Australia, have followed in her footsteps and adopted, I believe, a similar attitude. And I think it's wonderful. And today I'm going to just briefly mention two of our own, model Tia, who's here today with us. And of course, she'll speak for herself and her own journey. And we also have Anella. Now, Anella is also, she's from Melbourne, and she certainly has publicly spoken and declared the same attitudes as Winnie, that, you know, she's not going to be defined and isn't defined by her vitiligo. And I think it was last year she did a really big fashion shoot for the youth fashion brand Sports Girl. And it was themed something like Be Your Own Girl, which obviously is a very positive logo for diversity. And the poster included models with diversity, including Anella. And the posters were in the window of the Sportscraft store. Huge, just a huge poster like Winnie's had been. And I laughed to myself and I thought, yes, it's still happening and it's still wonderful. So I went into the store and congratulated them. And on behalf of the VAA, I contacted Sportscraft and congratulated them on their campaign. What I like about Anella as well is she doesn't only challenge or allow being a model with vitiligo or allow it to define her. I think she challenges conventional standards of beauty in other ways. And I think you can, if you look at images of her, you can see that for yourself. So I think we should be very proud that we've got some of our own vitiligo models who are really becoming quite prominent. Next slide, please, Mohan. Okay, advertisers, as we all know all too well, they're pretty good at tapping into social trends for their own marketing purposes, but nevertheless, leaving cynicism aside, they're certainly increasingly realising the power of including images of diversity in their advertising, and I think it's great personally. I love it. So, and they're using models with vitiligo, and here are a couple of examples. We have CoverGirl, we have Clark's, who've recently put out this advertisement of the young boy of school age, which, you know, is just so fabulous. And there have been other major campaigns by skincare company Dove and the Gillette Venus razor blades, which I think was on television, and it featured young female models with vitiligo. And Jennifer and I, Jennifer from the VAA, were at a tram stop one day in Melbourne when we were there for the annual scientific meeting, and there was the big billboard screen in the tram stop showing the Dove ad with the vitiligo model. Next slide, please. We have the incorporation of dolls and figurines in popular culture with vitiligo. Mattel, who makes Barbie and Ken, have been representing their dolls with various ethnicities and physical disabilities. They got Wheelchair Baby. This is Barbie. This has been going on for quite a while. But more recently, it's now created, as you probably all are well aware, Barbie, both black and white with vitiligo, and now we've got Malibu Ken, who's quite a cute figure in his shorts. He's got vitiligo, obviously, and we've got a new Lego figurine. I'd like to see G.I. Joe come up next, but we'll wait and see. So I think given the enormous popularity of Barbie, it's a, you know, really a great thing. So we've got also actors and other public figures. Here we have Holly Combs, an American actress who's recently been coming out and talking about having vitiligo. We've got our own actress here. Gosh, her name's Miranda. Sorry, I've forgotten her surname. And we've got an Indian politician who's quite prominent, and he's now risen, I'm told, to the role of Premier of a state in India. And I think we all can understand that politicians in particular have an image that they have to maintain, as well as, you know, just their political credibility. And I think it's really, really good to see him rising to a position where he obviously should be. And we have Michael Jackson, of course, who we all know didn't really come out, but we know, I think by now, how hard his journey was and how perhaps sad his life had become. Next slide, please. We've got another initiative that I found online. It came up on my Facebook, DermaCupid, a dating app for people with skin conditions. It's certainly been a popular app in India, where, as we can understand, I think, particularly with arranged marriages, that people with vitiligo are often not accepted as being suitable marriage partners. So I think it's really good that these alternative forms of dating are being opened up to people. Next slide, please. Wow, this is something really, to me, interesting and special that's been happening. Modern art and photography, and they're using the concept of skin as an art form, which is really interesting as well, but perhaps not without controversy. So this first image here is of Lee Thomas by Brock Elbank. Now, Lee Thomas is a very prominent American TV anchor, author, and motivational speaker. He's a really amazing person in his field, and as you can see, it's a very, very dynamic portrait of him. Brock Elbank he's a very famous photographer, very well known. He used to be a fashion photographer, but lately he started these portraits of people with skin conditions. He's done freckles, he's done birthmarks, scars, and vitiligo, and many other conditions. And his aim is to see beauty in imperfection. And he also includes children, which is really good, and he does it very sensitively. And he's formed the Brock Elbank Foundation, which is described as a community interest company, focusing its efforts on skin positivity, which is like a new narrative that's coming out as well, especially amongst artists. And another person working in this goal, towards this goal, if we could have the next slides, please. We've got a Brazilian muralist, Andrew Keto, and this is apparently a very large mural up somewhere in Brazil. And it was a young teenage girl he saw walking in his town, and he just thought she was so beautiful, and he's done a massive mural of her for the public to appreciate and enjoy. And yeah, I think it's very pretty, very nice. Next one. Yeah, we've got various modern artists. I don't know much about this one, but you can see the image. It's a bit of pop art there, but it's certainly becoming a very, very popular form of art. Next, please. This is lovely. This is a hyperrealist artist called, well, he's actually a doctor, David Fowler. He's Nigerian. He's an artist photographer, and he's done a series of artworks called The Skin. And he, like Brock Elbank, feature volunteers with vitiligo, melasma, freckles, acne, all sorts of conditions. And he does very sensitive portraits. And yeah, all credit to him as well. And he also works in skincare. Just before I finish, recently I came across a young female photographer in Cairns. I noticed a poster, a small one, seeking volunteers for her project called Skin. So she wants to feature a range of images of skin conditions, not so much of the person, but more of the body part or the condition, with a view to promoting skin positivity and self-acceptance. She told me she decided on the project after noticing that a lot of her clients were asking her to airbrush or to mask what they believe to be their imperfections in photos. And she thought, well, you know, they're not really imperfections. They're part of you and your beauty. And maybe I'll do something to promote that. And she actually got a government grant for it, which is really, really good. And she intends to exhibit her in Cairns in August. I volunteered for her project to represent vitiligo, and she did a very artistic photograph of my feet, which have vitiligo. So I hope one day to be able to put it on our website. So look, in summary, I think it's great that many people are working really tirelessly around the globe, lending their image, overcoming their challenges personally, risking aspects in their career, all to promote this fabulous new visibility and acceptance of oneself in a more positive way. And I think our next speaker, the lovely Tia, is an example of such a modern young influencer. So I'll now hand you over to Tia, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks again, Nada. That was wonderful, and I think it's always very important to hear the personal stories, and my hope is that for some people, maybe even here today, that moment that you had witnessing Winnie, that was really so key, really, to transforming the way that you see vitiligo and your condition, Nada. Maybe some people might have that experience after an event like today. So thank you very much again, Nada. So it now gives me very much great pleasure to introduce our main speaker today. So Tia Fijalkowski is a very impressive young lady who happens to have vitiligo, and she has been a member of the VAA and has chosen really to be an advocate for those with vitiligo, and she continues to encourage and to inspire a lot of people, particularly young people, and is doing some amazing work. So Tia, it's just wonderful to have you here. I'm going to now hand the floor to you and look forward to hearing your presentation. Thanks, Tia.
Thank you. Thank you. So welcome everyone to our World Vitiligo Day event. It is so lovely to see all your beautiful faces here in person. And thank you, Northern Western community, for having us today. So I'll just start off with a little bit about myself. So my name is Tia. I'm 22 years young. I have a Sri Lankan and Polish background. I'm currently working in management and alongside HR in a private health insurance company as a capability lead. Essentially what that means is I help close knowledge gaps amongst our member delivery teams, as well as facilitating onboarding inductions. I have a bachelor's degree in health science from Monash University, and I have an interest in pursuing my master's in public health. So I became involved with the VAA back in 2019. Since then, I've helped with managing our Instagram account as well as running an online support group, which was predominantly run during the lockdowns. Next slide, please. So I developed my first patch of vitiligo at the age of 3. This was just a small white patch on my wrist. This didn't impact me too heavily. So I feel as if my true vitiligo journey began when I was 16 years old, completing year 10 of high school. So my vitiligo grew rapidly, spreading mostly on my face and developing spontaneously around my body. As my vitiligo became more noticeable, it had turned into a daily battle, and I found myself at war with my own self-love. Being a teenage girl in an all-girls school, I'd come to realize what my worst nightmare was, and I was living it. I became very conscious of how my friends, families, and peers viewed me. I remember growing up and reading a quote, "If the words you spoke appeared on your skin, would you still be beautiful?" For some strange reason, I associated this quote with my vitiligo, and I was convinced that this was karma. I was cursed with this disease as some sort of punishment, and no one would ever find me beautiful. Now, this was not at all the case, and I was projecting my own insecurities. Every day before school, I would put on a face of makeup and hide my vitiligo. I was terrified of how my peers and teachers would view me, and I often felt as people were always looking at me oddly, or when I was speaking with them, I could see their eyes flicker around my face and onto my white patches. I'd placed so much pressure on myself to meet the impossible standards of what society thought was beautiful. I eventually succumbed to this pressure, and I developed anxiety and depression. While vitiligo is fundamentally a physical issue, it does have mental and emotional dimensions. When I was 17 years old, my vitiligo became very prominent on my face. During my daily 25 commute to school by train or bus, I noticed a change in how the general public treated me. Often people would avoid sitting next to me, they would see my skin, and then they would move away, I'm assuming in fear of catching it. This made me feel very alienated as I was a young teenage girl. Over the years, I encountered some hurtful and abusive comments. I was directly shamed for my looks. I felt that I let down my family and friends, believing that no one would want a child, sibling, or a friend who looked like I did. I felt as if I'd become a burden to my family with the constant doctor's appointments and potential treatment expenses we would be facing. Now, during my diagnosis, my parents lovingly urged me to explore treatment options, including a certain cream at the time. Their intentions were so genuinely caring, driven by a desire to help me. However, despite their well-meaning efforts, I couldn't find the courage to express what I truly needed from them. From their perspective, I completely understand that they had seen my struggles and sought solutions to bring me relief and joy. Deep down, I just knew this condition was not going anywhere and there wasn't going to be a cure for it. Them encouraging me for remedies to help my skin made me feel as though they were somehow ashamed. Now, I want to emphasize that this was absolutely not the case. Their actions had stemmed from concern and love, Yet I had just convinced myself that it was otherwise, and these contribute to feelings of loneliness and disappointment. So let's fast forward a few years. Although my journey had started off on a bumpy note and brought many psychological challenges to my life, I decided to change my attitude about how I viewed my vitiligo. Realizing it wasn't going anywhere, I wanted to focus on self-acceptance rather than how others viewed me. Now, this is not as easy as I'm making it out to be. It took many, many months, lots of patience, self-love, and mindfulness. Deep down, though, I did like that I was part of such a unique and special group, only affecting 1 to 2% of the world. Once I began to embrace and accept this about myself, I noticed that others also changed their views of me. I found that being a young person with such a challenging condition allowed me to inspire others with different conditions, not always just vitiligo. Although this condition does not define me, it has helped create the person I've become today. My vitiligo brought me a newfound confidence and enabled me to be proud of my looks. It's now become one of my favorite features about myself. Today's society is constantly changing and developing, and it places great emphasis on accepting differences and individuality. I also began to understand that the way you see yourself can significantly influence how others treat you. This concept is based on the idea that self-perception affects behavior, confidence, and communication, which in turn shapes how others perceive and interact with you. Currently, I'm a signed model, and I have been for the past 3 years. I've worked with many brands and companies such as Sephora, Fila, and Maya. For majority of my jobs, I have been booked in light of my vitiligo. I was very hesitant coming into the modeling industry. I had no idea how the beauty and fashion world would react to my skin. Turned out they actually did love it. Most of the time anyway. To this day, I've only had one encounter where I was told I needed to cover my patches to look normal and appropriate for TV. Next slide, please. Historically, vitiligo was very misunderstood. Now I'm referring to many moons ago. Ancient civilization viewed it as a curse or a punishment from the gods. Some cultures and religions considered vitiligo as a result of evil spirits. This resulted for people with vitiligo to be feared and often subjected to unnecessary rituals meant to cleanse them. However, as medical sciences advanced, our understanding of vitiligo began to change. It became clear that it is an autoimmune condition where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks the pigment-producing cells. This knowledge helped shift perception from superstition to science. In the Western world, attitudes towards vitiligo have become more positive in recent years. In countries like the United States, Canada, and majority of Europe, there is a growing awareness and acceptance of vitiligo. Western societies are progressively recognizing the importance of inclusivity and diversity, promoting the idea that beauty comes in all forms. In contrast, in some parts of Asia, vitiligo is surrounded by stigma and misconceptions. For example, in India and China, vitiligo can be seen as a sign of bad luck. This perception is often rooted in cultural beliefs and superstitions, leading to social ostracism and discrimination. However, there are efforts being made to educate the public and dispel these myths. In many Middle Eastern countries, vitiligo is often misunderstood and can be seen as a medical or cosmetic concern rather than a social issue. This perspective can sometimes lead people to seeking medical treatments to restore skin color. Nonetheless, there is a growing movement towards acceptance with increased visibility of people with vitiligo in the media and public life. Across all countries, one thing does remain clear. Education and representation are key to changing attitudes towards vitiligo. By sharing accurate information and promoting positive representation in the media, supporting those with this condition, we can combat stigma and promote acceptance worldwide. Next slide, please. The media has played a crucial role in the evolution of how vitiligo is viewed. Positive representation in movies, television, and fashion has contributed to broader acceptance. Models like Winnie Harlow, who proudly showcases their vitiligo, has become icons of beauty and strength, challenging traditional standards and inspiring many. The visibility in the media helps normalize the condition and sends a powerful message that beauty comes in all forms. Video games, a very significant part of modern media, have also embraced diversity in recent years. Popular games like Fortnite, Animal Crossing, and Call of Duty now include characters with vitiligo. This representation is incredibly impactful, especially for our younger audience. Animal Crossing, for example, known for its inclusive and customizable characters, allows players to create avatars with vitiligo. This option provides a sense of representation and belonging for those with the community, fostering a more inclusive gaming community. I grew up surrounded by Barbie, a thin, white, blonde hair, blue-eyed doll. I grew up looking in the mirror and seeing the opposite of that: tan skin, brown eyes, brunette hair. As I continued to grow up, I then was looking in the mirror to see tan skin with white patches. When the Vitiligo Barbie was introduced in 2020, it healed a part of my teenage self-heart. Growing up, I would have loved to see a doll that looked like me. Now I finally have that representation. This doll is exactly what many of our younger girls with vitiligo need, and it fills my heart with joy knowing that they have this for themselves. Next slide, please. Today we stand at crossroads. While significant progress has been made, there is still work to be done. Public awareness has increased, yet misconceptions and prejudice persist. It is our collective responsibility to continue this journey towards acceptance and understanding. We must foster environments where individuals with vitiligo feel empowered and supported. This involves educating ourselves and others, and celebrating the diversity that makes our world beautiful. Remember, your skin tells a story of courage, strength, and uniqueness. If there is anything that I've learned over my journey, it's this: everyone in the world handles things differently. People, places, experiences, situations, everything. Vitiligo is the same. One person may not want to acknowledge their vitiligo, and for whatever reason that may be, that is okay. Others are able to embrace their vitiligo and want to learn more about it. That is also okay. Someone else may not want to be in the limelight, and that is also okay. There is no right or wrong answer. Remember, it's your journey, and it is okay. As Nikki Bannis said, the only one who gets to decide your worth is you. It doesn't come from your bank account or the number of friends you have, and it doesn't come from what someone else says you're worth. It's called self-worth for a reason. It comes from you. It comes from being yourself and being proud of who you are. It comes from being someone that you can count on and someone that you can love. Thank you all again for coming today. I'm in awe to be part of such a beautiful and unique community. So I will open the floor to you guys for any questions.
Well, that was amazing to hear. Thank you. No, thank you so much. And well, I think we can't but be inspired by your very personal, heartfelt story, and thanks for sharing. It really was wonderful. I will open the floor to any questions. I guess first anybody in the audience here in Melbourne, but I think it's possible to put questions on the app as well. If we have any, Jennifer, let me know. But any questions for Tia at all? Since we've got her here as part of the event. And look, maybe Tia, I might just ask that I know you're in touch with influencers overseas, and I'm interested to know how they feel things are traveling in different parts of the world, how you guys connect, and what sort of community do you have online with other people who choose to be influencers?
The acceptance of vitiligo definitely is growing and spreading. A lot of us, we do carry the same attitude of trying to challenge the standard definition of beauty. And I think because we all share that attitude, that, and promoting it and showing it off, we are noticing that there are more campaigns with it, and it's becoming a lot more normalized, where a lot of us had kind of felt very isolated and abnormal and alienized when we first started developing the condition. So it is really nice to see it coming out in the beauty and fashion world.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Matt.
This is from Tia's dad, by the way.
So as the medical industry advances, and the time will come where potentially there'll be treatments for vitiligo, which will normalize your skin, would you consider taking it?
I personally wouldn't. It was such, it was challenging for me to accept it. And even now my patches are starting to fade a bit, and I'm going through like an identity crisis, trying to like find myself again. So I wouldn't want to change anything about my skin. Whatever happens, it will happen naturally. But I would not want to undergo any treatment. I think it's so beautiful, and it's a blessing in disguise that I do have this condition.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
So I have questions from Faye and Robin. Maybe it might be challenging to put you on audio. So is it possible to put a comment or question on the chat function?
If I speak, can you hear me?
Otherwise, with all these devices, as you can see, there's this problem of this interference. But all right, here we go. So, so a question from Charlie about current developments in treatment. I think, Charlie, it's of course the question we all ask. It's look, without wanting to sort of dismiss it, it's probably not the perhaps the forum that we're having today. I think suffice it to say that there is ongoing research, but we're still a long way ahead from a long way from developing treatments that are truly going to bring the colour back in people with very stable vitiligo, where we're not able yet to bring the colour back through ultraviolet therapy or immunosuppressive therapy. It's something that we hope to give updates on through the VAA, through other sessions, but thanks for the question.
It's not necessarily a question. It's probably more, I just wanted to say, firstly to Tia, I think I met you in 2015 or 2016, and I'm so proud of what you've been able to achieve, and the beautiful heartfelt message you're sending out there on behalf of all of us is really greatly appreciated. And honestly, you've done so well. So thank you so much. I personally have, I think since I met you, decided that I'm going to go naked and not wear makeup. I used to. And I think it is an ongoing challenge for a lot of us that overcoming and getting familiar with and self-love is such a big challenge for a lot of people. And yeah, you've nailed it. Thank you. You've done such an amazing job. Thank you.
Way to do that, but thanks so much, Faye.
That was very sweet. I really appreciate those kind words. Thank you so much.
Oh, question from the floor, Damien.
You mentioned that the vitiligo is changing, and so it's kind of almost like a new identity. So what sort of things that you do to kind of manage that or sort of accept that? Because for me personally, just when I think it's kind of stabilized, it changes, and so it's kind of relearning to do life itself again.
Mm-hmm.
The question, I might just repeat that for those who couldn't hear from Damien in the audience here, was relating to how vitiligo is, on the one hand, well, you claim as a part of your identity, but yet, particularly as it may change, how do you manage that?
Mm-hmm. Great question. This is probably something that I'm still learning to do. I don't think I'll ever have this 100% down packed. I think for me, I can get very caught up in social media and how people are meant to look, always scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. And I'm very privileged that I've got such a great support group. I've got my parents, my partner, my best friend, and they remind me that there is always so much more to your appearances, and that this condition is a blessing in disguise. So even though it's changing, I'm just growing as a person with it. It's not changing me as a person. It is altering my looks, but it's who I am. And I think with that, it comes a lot of patience. Like, there are still days where I'm frustrated with my vitiligo and I want to scream, and if it's not looking how I want it to look, and that's just natural and it just comes with it. But then there are also days where I absolutely love it and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But yeah, a lot of patience, a lot of mindfulness, and just not getting caught up in the current beauty trends and how social media and what society says you're meant to look like, because there is no way you're meant to look. That's rubbish. Yeah.
I just have another question.
Yeah.
Another question from Matt.
Is it true that your boyfriend has vitiligo as well, and was that on purpose?
We're getting personal here. So the question was, is it true, Tia, that your boyfriend, Jack, has vitiligo, and was that on purpose? Jack, you can feel free to come up if you want to, or not.
That is true. He has it on his hands. Huge coincidence. I had no idea. We were out on our first date and I noticed it on his hands and I was like, oh my God, twins. So it was just really cute, but complete coincidence. Yeah. So feel free to have a look at his hands.
I actually think it's on Tia's Instagram account. Is that right? So
Yeah, it is on my
Jack's,
Insta page.
Jack's hands are famous.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yes. So I have a comment from Nada. So I just want to congratulate Tia for her courage in talking about her personal journey and a wonderful presentation. You're a credit to your generation. So that's from Nada.
Thank you.
All right. So I think if it's Polo. Polo, come up here because you deserve to be in front of the camera. So Polo's another one of our very dedicated members. And before I introduce Polo, I do just want to thank Polo and Sadhguru, Polo's husband, Jennifer and Victor, for helping to set things up today. They've been just wonderful getting all the balloons set up and making the place look nice. That's we are hoping that this will spur us into, I think, more activities and, of course, just to really a call out for anybody who is interested in being involved in the VAA and helping to organise these events. We'd very much like to hear from you. Paulo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks, Sadhguru. Thanks, Victor and Tia. That was really inspiring. Thank you so much for coming and giving us the talk today. Nada as well, thank you so much. And Mohan. Tia, what I wanted to ask from you is, what's the advice you would give young girls? We have two beautiful girls here today. What is the advice, one advice that you would give to any girl, boy, whoever who is struggling, to find their identity? What's that one advice that you wish you had when you were growing up, or you wish to give it to someone at this point of time?
I think I would say being different is being special. If you don't look like your classmates or your other friends, that's okay, because you're so beautiful and special in your own way. It's like your superpower, essentially. You've got a special superpower that only 1% to 2% of the whole world has. Do you know how rare that is? That just makes you guys like extra, extra cool. So it's your superpower.
Excellent.
Well, that's very positive. Oh, one last question, Harry. You've just managed to get in.
Do you have any dating advice?
Okay. Important question from Harry is any dating advice?
I find it difficult to find a partner like, because of this condition. So do you have anything in mind or any strategies or something like that?
I would say flaunt it. Like, be so completely open and honest about it. Like, don't hide it and express it. And if you're finding people that don't accept you, that is a projection of them. That has nothing to do with you. And you will find the person that will love you for you. And anyone else, I wouldn't give them the time of day, because they wouldn't deserve you otherwise.
We have two more comments. Well, firstly, a comment from Faye. I thought it was also worth mentioning that I'm currently studying to become a therapist coach to help people with visible conditions who haven't quite accepted their circumstances to love the skin they're in. That's fantastic to hear, Faye. And we did have a question, a couple of questions from those who have joined us virtually. So it's a bit tricky just with the changing over to the computer. So I'll actually ask Robin when I give the thumbs up to maybe to speak. So
First of all, I want to thank everybody. It's been very inspiring. My question has nothing to do with the aesthetics of vitiligo. I've accepted that. I've had it for a year now, and I've come to terms with that very slowly but surely. I have noticed since I got vitiligo that I get bitten by mosquitoes. I never got bitten by mosquitoes previously, and I don't know what kind of repellent I should apply to my particular condition of vitiligo. And the other question is also a management one. I coagulated very well before I had vitiligo. I'd coagulate very quickly, but if I scratch myself now, I don't coagulate for a while. Does anybody have that experience or know the answer, please?
Yep. We'll come back to the answers, Robin, and we'll just get the other questions online. Alejandra.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Alejandra.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, I've been having vitiligo since I arrived in Australia 2007. I didn't have it. I was 42 years old. I'm a musician. I do music for a living. And at the beginning, I started really being like everyone, being conscious about it because I have dark skin, and obviously straight away it shows, huh? So I started buying paint for my hands because I play guitar, and then I started little by little. I start not to care anymore, but I still put a little bit of a derma skin, whatever that thing, and I put it here on my face because it's probably my ego doesn't let me because I'm a performer. I'm a Mexican mariachi man, and but now I let people see my hands with vitiligo, and I teach kids as well and children. They look at my hands and they're very respectful. Now, like in the very beginning, I think Nada was saying that, or someone from you were saying about people are getting used to it, or are being, especially children, are being educated to not comment on people's or be staring at people's looks or making comments of how do you look, except real little ones, like preps. They ask you what happened to you, and I always say, well, I still play so much guitar that my color goes off. Anyway, but with my face, I just I started with my neck. I just let people see my neck all white, and but I still have a little bit of a thing with my face and my eyes. I still put makeup on. I'm still getting to terms little by little with my age. I actually was working one day. We had a little a tour with Adam Hills. He doesn't have vitiligo, but he's got a prostate. How do you say a leg? A false leg, and I talked to him about my condition when we met, and he said that it took him a while to come to terms with his leg like that, and because he's a comedian now, he makes not a joke out of it, but he doesn't care anymore. So it has happened to me as well. Like a little by little, I just let it show, and not caring anymore. Like it's hard for a performer like me. I have been performing for many years, almost most of my life. But until I came to Australia, it has been a struggle with my skin condition, and I hope everyone there, that are struggling with the fact that this thing is very obvious, and people look at you, stare at you, And sometimes I don't wear it all. I mean, sometimes I don't put makeup all day long. I'll go out with my wife to the supermarket, and I just don't care. I just put it on sometimes when I go and perform. But I think one day I'm just gonna just let it go and be as it is. Thank you for listening to me.
So Nada, did you have something to say?
Look, I just wanted to, sorry, I've lost the screen. To thank Alejandro for being so honest and open. We've known each other for a long time, and I understand and appreciate your journey, Alejandro, and it's great to hear you talk so openly, and lovely to see you here today. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll hand it back over to you, Adrian.
So, Robin, I don't know the answer to your very interesting question about whether there's any difference in terms of mosquitoes' preference. I know Natalia, Tia's mum had a comment, is that right?
He is also a mosquito magnet, and I have fresh aloe vera plant in the backyard. So cutting the tip off it using the fresh mosquito serum does make it from the mosquito bite from growing, and it does ease the pain a little bit for Tia.
Very good. So, Robin, the comment from Tia's mum was that Tia's also a mosquito magnet, and that fresh aloe vera seems to do the trick. All right. So, and all right. Well, look, thank you again, everybody, for attending, both here in Melbourne and, of course, online. And again, a special thanks to Nada and Tia for giving us their time and, of course, sharing their personal stories. So with that, I'd like to wind up the online forum. We've got a few treats for our people here with some cupcakes and a goodie bag, but hopefully that we'll all get to meet online or in person again next year. So with that, I'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.